to discuss. And that is, why do we choose pain? And I really want you to think about that for a moment. Why do we choose pain? Now, before we go flying off the handle and saying, well, I don't choose pain, who would ever choose pain? But that's preposterous. Let me clarify what I mean by that. I think there's a few kinds of pain, right? There's a physical pain that many of us might feel. We get hurt, we have an injury, whatnot. I'm not talking about that physical pain. What I'm talking about specifically today is mental and emotional pain. The pain that we torment ourselves with what we're thinking in here and what we're feeling within here. More specifically, I want to focus on the pain that we create and precipitate. So this isn't to say that, this isn't counting, let me pause. This is not addressing pain, normal emotional pain. What would I define as normal emotional pain or normal mental pain? For example, if you just ended a relationship, there's going to be an expected amount of pain that's going to come with that. If you had a recent death in your family, there's going to be a certain amount of pain that's going to come with that. That's not addressing this. What this is addressing is precipitating pain, and this is also addressing imagined pain. Imagined pain is going to be the pain about what we think or what we feel or what we believe might happen in the future. Show of emojis, right? Thumbs up, hearts, whatever, smiley faces, whatever the hell you can type on Instagram. How many of you have ever imagined a painful future, right? You've imagined that something horrible was going to happen. You imagine a fearful existence. You imagine that something bad would happen. You imagine that you wouldn't be able to do something because of fear. You imagine that everybody would laugh and make fun of you. You imagine that your great idea would never come to fruition. You imagine that you'd work out really hard only to gain the weight back. You imagine that if you tried to ask the person out, that they would reject you. You imagine that if you asked for the promotion, your boss would instead fire you. Right? Have any of us ever done that before? That's what I mean when I say future pain. It's pain that has never been experienced, yet we'll believe it to be true as real as if we're actually physically experiencing it like this. These are the kinds of pains we want to talk about today, and I'm going to share with you 3 big reasons why we ultimately choose pain. These are reasons. These aren't a definitive list at all. And I would love to hear your feedback, your comments, your questions, all that at the end, which we'll open it for that. So the first big reason we choose pain is the excuse that pain gives us. The excuse that pain gives us. What do I mean by that? How many of you have ever known that you wanted something more in your life? How many of you have ever believed that you were meant for something more? How many of you have ever known that you need to do something to make a dramatic change? You need to join a fitness program. You need to become an entrepreneur. You need to end a relationship. You need to ask for a raise, whatever that is. How many of you know you need to do something, but you don't? And why don't you? Because of fear, because of what might happen, because of blah, 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 fill in the blank. You see, pain gives us a really beautiful excuse, and one that we can justify then to all the people in our lives, can't we? Because have you ever noticed that when you have that feeling that you know you need to do something, you have that feeling that you know you're meant for more, you have that feeling that whatever you're thinking about doing is the thing that you need to do, but then that little fear voice pops up and it starts to whisper in your ear, doesn't it? And says, oh, well, what if this happens? You can't do that. That's silly for you to even try. God, what happens if you fail? That might be so hard. Don't risk it. And then what do? We listen to that voice. And we might call up our friend or our colleague or our coworker, whoever it is we know as our primary confidant. That is going to be the one to help us justify it. Do you ever notice that you have accountability buddies in pain? Right? You have that one person that you can turn to, that when you are at that point where you need to confront your shit, but you don't want to today because it's kind of scary. Pick up the phone, shoot a text out to the one person that you know will help you, talk you off of doing anything about moving forward. Why is that? because they want you to stay in the same place because they want to stand in the same place. What happens if you confront your stuff and you make these big changes? Well, now they have to confront their stuff too, right? Because you, by nature of not moving forward and listening to your fear voice and pushing down your greatness, lets them do the same, doesn't it? And I see lots of little emojis popping up and comments popping up, so I'm taking this as this is connecting with you all and you are feeling this. Notice the feeling that you're feeling right now. Okay, that feeling may be a feeling of certainty. This is a similar feeling that you might get at times when you know you need to do something, when you know this next thing is the right step for you to take, isn't it? And this is the exact feeling I'm talking about that we allow the excuse of pain to talk us out of pursuing. Because pain will pop up and it'll say, again, what about this? What if? And we imagine these scenarios. Now, if we actually stop to think about it, meaning we remove our emotion from it, we just talked about it logically, what is the statistical probability of some of those scenarios that you imagine actually happening? Probably pretty slim to none. Right? How many of you have ever had an experience where you knew you needed to do something, you knew you needed to change, instead of listening to the fear, you actually went with the emotion, you did it, and then you thought, wow, that wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. Isn't it interesting that history's on our side to back us up with this? Yet so often we don't do anything because we allow our excuses to become the dictators of our lives, as opposed to the excuses to be the signalers of our life of this is something we need to look at and this is something we need to change. And reason number one why we choose pain is it gives us a hell of an excuse. Reason number two, which was already alluded to in this, but is piggybacking off of an excuse, is it helps us avoid responsibility. If we choose pain, it helps us avoid responsibility. Now let me give you an easy scenario that most of us can relate to, and then we'll work our way up the ladder here. It's Sunday morning, and we've had a long week. And all we want to do is just lay in bed and sleep for a few more minutes. But we know that we have responsibilities that we need to get up and doing. But gosh, our bed sure does seem cozy at that time, doesn't it? And boy, doesn't it seem nice to have the idea of staying in our pajamas a little bit longer. And boy, we sure did work hard during the week, didn't we? And, I know I made the commitment to get these things done, but I think I deserve to have this extra time this morning, don't I? I mean, what's it going to hurt if I stay in bed a little bit longer? Am I really going to be missing anything out? Gosh, and maybe I'll just roll over here and shut my eyes for a few more minutes, and the world will still be there. Those responsibilities are going to be there. They'll understand if I'm a little late. They'll forgive me if I don't show up. Has anybody ever done this before? Right? The pain or the idea of getting up, it allows us to avoid responsibility because really quick we can start cooking up some stories, and whoppers of one at that, about why we don't do it. Right? Well, now let's go move up the ladder a little bit. If I am afraid of flying, how easy is it for me to avoid ever going to a workshop, seminar, or something like that to grow myself as a person? If I am afraid of getting hurt, how easy is it for me to justify why I never go after the thing I want the most, which is a relationship? If I have a responsibility to, let's say, make a commitment to meet somebody at 5 p.m., but I had a episode of some sort of crying fit or self-pity time or pity party or whatever that is, and then I end up showing up later and cancel altogether. It's pretty easy to justify that, isn't it? Now, what would happen if you were fully responsible? See, if you're fully responsible and you're willing to take full responsibility for your life, you wouldn't be able to do that, would you? You wouldn't be able to roll over and play the excuse card. You wouldn't be able to go back to bed. Or you could go back to bed, but you'd take ownership about why you're going back to bed. You're going back to bed because you want to go back to bed. You don't need to pull in all the bullshit about, you just say, I'm going back to bed. It's cool. or you get your stuff done beforehand so you can earn the right to sleep in, as opposed to having to negotiate your ability to sleep in with everybody else, with yourself. Does that make sense? When we take full responsibility for our lives, we're pledging to do what we say we're going to do. Our word is our bond. We're going to follow through. We're going to do the things we need to do. We're going to honor those feelings that we have inside of us when we feel something connect with us and it's saying, it's screaming to us, you need to do this. You're meant for more. We honor those feelings. But when we don't take responsibility for our lives, we go and hop back on the excuse train. And anybody who's ever ridden an excuse train, you all know, where does it go next? It pulls out of this, it goes right to justification station, doesn't it? I can't because of this. I can't because I'm scared. I can't because of this. I'm unable to because of that. It's not me, it's this, blah, 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 blah. And we don't take ownership. How many of you have known someone who has a dream, has an ambition in life? Perhaps you know yourself. Perhaps that person is the person you see in the mirror. And they don't pursue that which they're after. And when you ask them about it, they start to talk about everything else and all the reasons why they can't. Instead of the few reasons that are the most important reasons, which is why they should and why they must. This leads into the third big reason why we choose pain. And that is because pain equals blame. Pain empowers us to play the blame game, right? When we don't take responsibility, what do we want to do? We don't want to find fault in ourselves, do we? So what do? We put our finger up and we start pointing it at anything and everything else. It's not my fault, it's his. It's not my fault, it's hers. It's not my fault, it's the politicians, it's the president, it's the government, it's this, it's that. You know, I can't help it. They make it too expensive to live here. I can't help it. They charge too much for money. I can't help it. It's too costly to live here. I can't help it. It's, you know, they were late. They didn't follow through. The insurance didn't work. The internet connection sucked. The roof collapsed. My clothes were dirty, etc., etc., etc. And you see these three fingers here? We always have three fingers pointing back at ourselves. See, most of us will play the blame game because we don't want to take responsibility for ourselves. It's so much easier to blame the cost of living rather than saying, if I want something more, I can do something differently. It's so easy to blame the politicians for why things aren't working the way you want them to work, when no one dictates the quality of your life other than you. Because the quality of your life is determined not by what happens. The quality of your life is determined by the meaning you choose about what happens. And if you have something happening in your life that you're not happy about, there's a meaning within it that you can choose that can shift a difference. And now, again, let me pause and say, does bad stuff happen to good people all the time? Absolutely. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the precipitating or the imagined pain. So those of you just jumping in here, I don't want you to come in here and think, oh, he's making all these claims, blah, blah, blah. I'm talking about specific kinds of pain. I'm not talking about life happening and it just altering right in front of you. I'm talking about this pain that we precipitate, this pain that we imagine. If I imagine that me putting myself out there is going to make me look like an ass, or people are going to laugh at me or point the finger and say, what a loser. I can sit there and now I have an excuse, right? Well, I'm not doing it because it's not because I don't believe in my voice. It's not because I don't believe in my words or my message. It's because of how cruel they'll all be to me. Do you guys get that? And then if I sit silently by now, it's not because I didn't have something to say or something to share. It's because you were too cruel to allow me to speak. And then we can play the blame game. And then we don't have to take responsibility for our own shortcomings. How many of you, honesty time, how many of you know someone who's like this? Or perhaps you've been like this at times too. I think all of us have. If we're really truly honest with ourselves, I think there's been a time in all of our lives where we've been like this. And if you find yourself in a position in life where you see the patterns continue to repeat, meaning history repeats itself and you're literally doing the Groundhog Day where you wake up and it's deja vu all over again. You're the hamster on the hamster wheel. It keeps turning and you're chugging along trying to get somewhere new, only to be in the same place. we have to acknowledge then about what our own responsibility is, and that we likely blame, right? I couldn't do it because they didn't get this set up in time. Couldn't do this because they screwed me over. I couldn't do this because of this. I didn't do this because of that. They messed up on my billing. They messed up in the accounting. They messed up on my order. Right? All of us have said those things. Did they really mess up on your order? Or did you fail to clearly articulate your order? Did they really mess up on your order? Did you fail to make sure they fully understood what you needed? Did they really mess up on your billing? Or did you fail to follow through and make sure the information was communicated clearly? You see, one of the greatest gifts you'll ever give yourself, and if you truly want to free yourself from a great deal of pain, is responsibility. Because in so doing, everything starts and stops with us. We don't have to become these leaves blowing in the wind at the mercy of wherever the wind wants to blow. We get to be our own independent vessels and being able to have the power to deliberately chart a course in whatever direction we want to go. But when we do that, there's not a lot of room for excuses, is there? And this is why we choose pain. Because pain gives us an excuse. Pain gives us an ability to avoid responsibilities. And pain gives us a license to blame. How many of you have ever tried to talk with somebody who's playing the blame game and confront them on it? It's tough to do so, isn't it, when they're really emotional, because after all, who are you to confront them? Who are you to challenge their pain? You don't understand where they are. You don't know where they're coming from, do you? Guess what? You all do. Because they're all a human going through a human experience, just like you. And one of the greatest gifts you'll ever be able to give someone is a gift to holding them to a higher level of accountability. A gift to when they try to make an excuse, or you see them avoiding responsibility, or you see them playing the blame game, to call them out on it. Call them out on it. And ask them, is what they're doing getting them the results they want in their life? All of us know that for most of us, that answer is going to be a big no. It's a no. If you love and care about those people in your life, call them out on it. Because otherwise, if we're tools, we're instruments in allowing their pain to precipitate, what we're inevitably doing is we're going to start inflicting pain on our own lives. And then when we start to choose pain for ourselves, we set ourselves up to allow ourselves to buy into the excuse, hop on the excuse train, head to justification station, take a detour of personal responsibility island, and fast track it to Blameville. And once we get to Blameville, and we're in that state where it's excuses, it's responsibility avoiding, it's blaming. Those of you on here who know what that's like know that you're getting nowhere fast. The only thing that's going to happen is time will continue to pass, and you will lose more precious time in your life than you'll be ever able to get back. I want to finish with this, and then I'll open up for questions. Every day I meet with people from all over the world to talk with them about doing various programs, various trainings of mine, various coaching programs. Each and every one of them will say what their goals are. They want to break through a fear. They want to nurture themselves mentally and emotionally. They want to overcome some obstacle. They want to break down a wall. They want to unlock whatever greatness they believe is inside of them. They want to find out and chart a path to that greater destiny that they feel inside of them they know is there. And inevitably, every single one of them who doesn't do it will have the same or similar reason why. I can't because, and you fill in the blank. I can't afford it. I am fearful, whatever that is. I need more time to think about it. When somebody tells me they want to think about it, by the way, and any of you who are in sales, you can use this for your sales thing. I don't even listen to that anymore. I just ask them, just yes or no. Because think about it to me is saying, I need to talk myself out of the feeling I have. Because the only thing you need to think about is you know you need to do this. There's a feeling you have, but you start talking yourself out of it. You need time to talk yourself out of it. You need time to get the excuses flowing. You need time to get the wheels greased up on the excuse train, and you need to be able to figure out how to get the justification station to back out of doing it. And what I want to leave you with is this. I spoke with my friend Johnny the other day, and those of you have seen the conversations with the Epicurean Cowboy videos that we do, Johnny is my friend who has been diagnosed with ALS, and he's going on 2 years with it now, and he can't use his arms, he can't use his hands, he can't feed himself, he can't dress himself anymore. There's more things he physically cannot do than he still can. As we were talking, Johnny was telling me, and this is going to be in a video that we're going to share on his page either today or tomorrow. And Johnny told me, he said, remember this. When you see a clock, that's not just time ticking off a clock. That's time ticking off your life. As cliche as it sounds, none of us are promised anything beyond right now. So many of us will use the excuse of, I'll deal with it tomorrow. So many of us will avoid our responsibility saying tomorrow is another day and it'll be better then. So many of us blame everyone else and say that we'll deal with it later. Or you can't handle it now because of what everyone else did. But if you were to embrace your life as the gift that it is, and realize that you're not promised tomorrow, but you're only guaranteed right now. And that the decisions you make right now are going to be what define the future that you live, I bet you would do things differently, wouldn't you? And I strongly urge you to consider that the next time you feel yourself starting to elect pain, starting to choose pain. And if you continue to choose it and do nothing to change it, I strongly, strongly hope you have the courage to ask yourself why. And ask yourself when. Meaning, when will you finally get to the point where you're no longer going to do this to yourself? When will you finally get to the point where you'll say, enough is enough, I don't want to listen to this voice anymore, I'm going to start going with what this voice in here is telling me. When you do this, your life will change. When you do this, going out and acquiring the tools, the resources, the support systems to get where you want to go in life will change. Because the fears you have about doing those, they fade away. Because now you've learned to trust in something much more higher and powerful than those little voices of fear that pop up. All right, that's what I have for today. So thank you so much, everybody, for standing by, all the thumbs up, the smiley faces, everything. Has this been helpful? And what questions do you have? I have time for a few questions, and I will do my best to peer in here on Instagram too and see if I can see some questions on here. What questions do you all have? Good. Thumbs up. Thank you. Yes, yes, yes. Awesome. Good. I'm glad this was so... Oh, Instagram, you can do different emojis too. You can do little hearts and you can do other things. That's very cool. Learn something new every day. What questions do you all have? Yes, yes, yes. Good. Extra big thanks to those of you who shared this and invited your friends and family to join in. It means a lot to me. I'm honored that you would do that. Thank you. Hello from Malaysia. Hello, Malaysia. What questions do you all have? I have a few minutes for questions. Don't get shy now. This is the time to ask. Sometimes that is difficult to call them out. And when you do, they get defensive. How do you approach this in a good way? That's a great question. If you choose to call somebody out, I would approach it from a place of love, meaning don't just call somebody out to call them out. Say, hey, you're doing this, it's wrong. That's where we get into trouble. Say something more like, hey, John, or April, hey, April, I know that it's really important to you to do X, Y, Z. And I got to tell you that when I see you doing A, B, and C, it seems like it's taking you further away from X, Y, Z. What could you do differently that would move you closer to X, Y, Z? And something as simple as that from a place of love, it can really make a profound difference in communication styles. Good question. How do you get off the train? Good question. That depends on what station you're at. It really depends on what station you're at. and there's a lot of ways you can get off the train, and it would depend on which suggestion I would give you to get off of it, would depend on which station you're at and why you're at that station. Make sense? Yeah, you're welcome. You're very welcome. What other questions do you have? I'm trying to scan up and down for Facebook and Instagram questions. Fear station. That would be... I'm not going to get into that one right now because that's more than we have time for in the scope right here. That would be something that if you wanted to jump into a formal coaching program with, because I would want to understand what your specific fears are, why those are there, etc., we could definitely knock that out. For the purpose of what we're doing right now, we're not going to dive too much into troubleshooting fears. I wanted to keep the questions focused on some of what we've done here. Make sense? But thank you for the question. And if it is something you wanted to shoot me an email, we can talk about that a little bit more. Any other questions? Those of you on Instagram, was this a comfortable format to log in on? Any other questions on Facebook? We good? All right, everybody. I think that is it. With that being